Hi, we're back with Youth Xpress, a program produced by the Eastern Caribbean Central Bank, highlighting issues that affect and matter to the young people of the Eastern Caribbean Currency Union. In this new series, we're meeting and speaking with young people who are helping to make decisions at the national level. Today's guest is the Honourable Minister of Social Development, Education and Library in the Government of Anguilla, Dee-Ann Kentish-Rogers. Kentish-Rogers was appointed to government when she was just 27 years old. Stay with us for the conversation after this message.
Celebrating ECCB at 40.
Did you know that the ECCB is one of 4 multi-country central banks in the world? The others are the Bank of Central African States, Central Bank Curaçao and Saint Martin, and the European Central Bank. Now you know. Celebrating ECCB at 40.
Welcome back. It's Youth Xpress looking at young people in government. It can appear on the surface that young people are less politically engaged than adults. Is this really the case? Can young people effectively participate in decision-making processes at the highest levels? Let's meet the 30-year-old Honourable Minister of Social Development, Education and Library in the Government of Anguilla, Dee-Ann Kentish-Rogers, who has been doing just that as an elected Member of Parliament. Minister Kentish-Rogers, welcome and thank you for joining us on Youth Xpress.
Thank you for having me.
My research tells me that you have been a model, a beauty pageant title holder, an athlete, and a lawyer. What else do we need to know about who Dee-Ann Kentish-Rogers is?
The essential components that make up who I am are pulled from my history and my list of experiences. I'm a sports enthusiast. I'm someone who believes in using sports as a catalyst for changing lives. I'm also passionate about using education as a tool to transform young people's opportunities within the working world. But outside of my passions and my advocacy in areas of education and sports, I'm also a salsa enthusiast. I'm a bibliophile. I am a self-classified intellectual, and I consider myself as someone who believes in the power of reinvention.
Great. What drove you to make the transition to politics?
The transition into politics really came about when I was approached. I was approached in 2019, a year after I had won the title and represented the UK at the Miss Universe stage. At that time, I was not very committed to engaging in the political process. And that's for the very same reason that I think most young people are hesitant to enter into political office. But I did really challenge myself to really think about the impact that I had the potential to make and to see to it that my hesitation wasn't simply a matter of me doubting my abilities. And if I felt I was equipped to challenge myself, to continue to reinvent who I am. And that's part of my DNA. I don't shy away from challenges. And because I'm so committed to personal and countrywide growth, I said to myself, if I'm going to be a representative of young people in this country, I want to be representative of the fact that young people are not afraid to take up political office.
Great. Take us back, will you? I hope that you will remember. How did you feel when you heard the elections results for your constituency on the night of 29th June 2020?
So I would say I was excited. I knew that I had put in a significant amount of work in the election and campaigning process, but I was also very aware that I had put myself up as a candidate a mere 7 months before a general election, and the opposition candidate had been in office for almost 40 years. So I had a healthy dose of conservatism about my prospects of winning the election. And so, I mean, it was a real honor to have been chosen by the people of District 4 in my constituency to represent them. And so I was very excited.
So you have been an elected parliamentarian and have been serving as a minister of government for close to 5 years. Tell us, what is a typical day like for you?
A typical day in this office varies very significantly, and that's because of the nature of government work and ministerial work. And that also is stratified into specific periods. So right now, for instance, I am in the process, we're in the budgetary and the medium-term economic and fiscal planning season, which requires us to have all of our policies and programs outlined before we even go into the budget process into November. So there's a lot of work that takes place between consulting with my constituents about the targeted campaign objectives that we campaigned on, about how those have changed throughout the course of the last 3 years, because we've had COVID, we've had a number of things changing, and then about managing expectations in my constituents. So there's a lot of constituency engagement for me on a day-to-day basis, but there's also a lot of engagement on the strategic targets and within my ministry, and there's always going to be something urgent that comes up. That's the nature of the business. There's always something urgent. So I go through having to have conversations and meetings with various ministries within government, and then various partners outside of government that we've developed longstanding partnerships with. We're looking at financial arrangements. I'm then looking at oversight of my statutory bodies and the satellite bodies that are attached to my ministry, and then government's overall functioning. So how we function as a cabinet, and making decisions at a cabinet-wide level about the prospectus for the country in general. So we have our executive functions, and then I also have my legislative functions as a member of parliament, reviewing legislation, proposing legislation, challenging and reviewing legislation. So there's the day-to-day function changes, and it requires a significant amount of very good time management skills to get the right balance.
Do you ever wonder, what did I get myself into?
You know, I think the challenge really is about managing expectations very well. I think that the reason why there's a lot of disappointment in political figures across the region is because we don't manage expectations very well. And I think that's even for young people. I think young people may sometimes expect, like, if you say something is going to happen overnight, but you have to have that real ability to speak honestly with your constituents about what is possible. And I believe Francis Assey said, you have to start with the necessary, then the possible, and someday you'll be able to accomplish the impossible. And I think that's something important for young people to understand as well, because when we're operating in government, you come in on a campaign high with all of your promises, but you meet a state of affairs for government. So as much as you have a large list of things that you want to accomplish, you're limited by government's resources and by the challenges that government has to face, whether or not it has debts it has to pay off or arrears. So there is a lot of difficulty in being a minister, and that's accepted. That's part of leadership. But I think it's also very rewarding when you're able to act responsibly, and through your responsibility, be able to deliver on the things that you people want to see and you want to get done.
Great. And talking about delivering, what have you been able to accomplish in terms of key programs since you've been a minister of government?
I say that my real accomplishment time frame started after COVID, because we had quite a lot of unexpected and changes in procedure during the COVID period. So from 2021 and end of 2021 going into 2022, we did a number of changes. One of the big changes that I instituted was the ending of colonial policies within our school systems in terms of their hair policies, and uniform policies. I've amended graduation policies to ensure that we have a level of give back. So part of what we allow children to aspire to is their engagement within our communities. I've formed a strategic partnership with a number of companies for the laying out of school lunch programs across all our schools. These are free school lunch programs for all our students across our school system. We have increased our sports expenditure and started new programs for giving athletes opportunities to develop their careers within the sporting field. We've amped up our digital technology within the classrooms. We are about to roll out a program that will provide free laptops for all our 3,000 students across the school system, Promethean boards. So a full digital infrastructure upgrade of our schools here in Anguilla. We've done upgrades of sporting infrastructure, and we're about to start building an indoor basketball court, looking to start the construction of a track and field facility, and a number of incubators and other ideas. So I've delivered on quite a number of initiatives because I understand how important it is to instill confidence in young people that things are happening, even though we have challenges. And I've done that by leveraging a lot of partnerships to get those things done. But outside of the partnerships, even within our system of policy, we've done a lot of policy changes within the system of education, and we're currently doing an education transformation review. We have our first annual education forum coming up in August of this year. So I think the whole goal is about sustainably changing the system so that everyone is able to participate in a piece of the pie.
Very impressive. What do you find most rewarding about your role as a minister of government?
I think the most rewarding thing is the realization that the work we're doing is matching with the aspirations of my people. Because everyone has within them the ability to achieve whatever they set their mind out to do, but there's a lot of circumstances within our small island developing states that means that we have resource limitations, but being able to facilitate anyone coming from any background to be able to reach that potential has really given me the motivation and inspired me to keep going within this field.
On the other hand, what do you find most challenging?
I think the challenge is always, this is about people, essentially. And so you will have people who will be able to understand what you're explaining and, come to terms with the strictures of government, and there'll be people who won't understand or who refuse to understand. And you have to come to peace with that, but it can be difficult. It can be difficult at times managing the expectations of people who refuse to believe or who refuse to understand. I've always taken the perspective of trying to be as collaborative as possible, and giving people an opportunity to voice their fears. So I also think there's a boundary you have to put in place for you not to burn out as a minister or as a person in government, in order to ensure that what you're doing is sustainable for the long term. And as a young politician, I think finding that boundary in the first part of my career was actually quite difficult, because I think I was just going. But I think I've found the balance now.
That's great. Now, from your interactions over time, especially with young people, what are some of the reasons that they cite for not being more engaged in politics?
Engaged from the perspective of actually being actively within politics themselves, to stand for office, or even, listening and paying attention to the issues. I think that's a array of factors. Fear of victimization is a major component. Petty personal politics, which it's unfortunate, but it happens. Whether you're being targeted, lack of interest is also a major part of why young people don't engage in politics. I think sometimes young people have very idealistic expectations, and having somebody explain to them, this is how this will work, and here's how we break this down, can sometimes seem very tedious to them. Especially, there's sometimes a barrier in terms of age, or which makes young people feel like, oh, they're just making an excuse. And so saying to someone that it's a complicated process doesn't necessarily make it easier for young people to feel like they're in tune with it. And so it's really important, I think, from that perspective, to really engage and educate our people so that they understand the process. Our civil education, civics in education is very, very important, but it's also very, very lacking here in Anguilla, something that we're trying to work on actively. So we're working on seeing how we can counteract some of the challenges we've actually seen in the past, so that young people in the future don't feel as though, well, this isn't something I want to be a part of, because they'll be well educated and able to engage with it meaningfully.
And do you agree that young people should have a voice, especially when it comes to important topical issues like food and nutrition security, or even digital transformation, that young people should play a role when it comes to contributing to their country's agenda on these important issues?
I think it's absolutely critical. There is no sustainable development in any of our small island developing states or any country without the input and the interest of young people, because what you'll have is a number of dying industries. It's very important for us to have young people engaged, because we want to ensure that young people become the ones that chart the course for the future, because we will essentially have to be the ones who inherit what is left. And when it comes to supply chain issues, food security issues, digital transformation issues, things that are, some of those things are in the hands of young people currently. So shaping the direction is in the hands of young people directly, and what they want their country to look like, how they put their stamp on that, is going to be extremely important for how we navigate the next 50 years with the onset of artificial intelligence and just global food security. So I think it's very important for young people to have a role to play. And I double down on that because I think over the years, we've done a disservice to our islands by doing sometimes what's popular, and sometimes it's necessary to do what is right, irrespective of what is popular. And I think young people are coming to the stage where they're realizing, okay, we're now in a stage where we have to clean up a lot of the mistakes that have happened in the past. And I do feel sometimes that you can't have the same people who made the mistakes clean them up, because sometimes they don't end up cleaning up the mistakes. They end up being exacerbated. So I do think young people are very important in shaping our country's agendas on these important items and these important issues. for the future.
Okay. Great. And as we wrap up, from your experience as a politician, a member of government, what would you say to young people now on this platform to encourage them to have their voices heard at the national level and contribute to the advancement of their countries?
Mm-hmm. I would say that being silent is not going to assist you or your country in taking the direction that you know you want to go into. If you don't share your perspectives, if you don't engage in the dialogue, what you want will not happen. The only way for you to influence or have an impact on your country's future is for you to say something. You can't say it on your deathbed. You can't say it in the next life. You can only say it now. So all of the frustrations you feel, even if you don't understand something, you have to participate to ensure that those frustrations don't grow. And by doing so, you'll be able to shape your country's perspective, or even if you're not looking as far out as saying you're shaping the entire country, you can shape the perspectives of those who you love. You can shape the perspectives of those who are influenced by you. And by creating a change in one other person's life, you can continue the theory of each one will teach one until you can create a larger impact.
Great. That brings me to the end of my questioning. But is there anything in particular that you would wish to add to this conversation?
I just want to go back to the what I shared earlier about, starting with the necessary, then doing what's possible, and then ending up to doing the impossible. And we talk a lot about goals and our direction being formulated by very small steps. And I want young people across the region to engage fully with the small steps, because it is through their small steps that we as small island developing states can take over the world. We have the creative capital, we have the intellectual capital to be able to do so, but we have to plug in. We have to be plugged in. And sometimes it requires us not just to do the things, and we hear the things that are popular, but we also have to do the difficult things. And I want young people to actually be at the fore of being the ones who do the difficult things, because we have the evidence that our forebears sometimes didn't make all the difficult decisions. But I think we are in a position where we have seen the effect of not doing the difficult things early, and being the persons in the position to say we are not going to be guilty of kicking the can down the road ourselves, and being the responsible ones in these discourses and in these spaces to be able to say we're doing what is necessary for our people to survive. So I just want to encourage young people to always think about doing the right thing over doing what's popular, and doing what's necessary to move to what's possible and then to what's impossible.
Great advice. I love it. Dee-Ann Kentish-Rogers, thank you so much, Minister, for chatting with us so passionately on Youth Xpress, and we want to wish you all the best as you continue to serve the people of Anguilla.
Thank you very much. Thank you.
That's it for this episode of Youth Xpress, meeting and chatting with young people in government. To wrap up the conversation, we head to Montserrat for another enlightening discussion with the Honourable Shanique Hoyt, Speaker of the Montserrat National Youth Parliament. Thank you for watching. We'll see you next time.